Start your wellness journey at Whole Foods Market, where it's Jumpstart January through the 16th. Stock up on supplements with some of the year's biggest savings. Plus, save on air-chilled organic boneless skinless chicken breasts, organic Honeycrisp apples, organic large Hass avocados, and more. And since Whole Foods Market is the only certified organic national grocer, it's easy to make them your wellness destination. Jumpstart your January now at Whole Foods Market.
Today on CityCast Chicago, we're ready to eat our way around Chicago in 2024. But where should we start? And what are the trends to watch in our world-class food industry? From exciting openings to tipping habits, host Jacoby Cochran talked with Eater Chicago's Ashok Selvam about what to expect from Chicago's food scene this year. It's Wednesday, January 3rd. I'm Simona Licea, in for Jacoby, and this is what Chicago's talking about.
Ashok, welcome back to CityCast Chicago.
Great to be here.
There was still a lot of pandemic recovery going on in Chicago restaurants last year. You and I talked about it a few times. If you had to give an overall prognosis for 2024, what would it be? Optimistic, worried? Where you feeling right now?
Oh, they're still digging out. I was just talking to one West Loop chef yesterday, and he was saying, we're still not there. He's about to open another restaurant, and he was saying, traffic's not going to be there, but we have to kind of establish a new normal and kind of a new standard for what success is. He's still going to go after it. He's still going to put out the best possible food, have like the best possible space for his customers. But, the return on investment is a little different.
What's the biggest concern? I mean, right now, everybody's dealing with inflation. Is it easy to staff? Like what's restaurant owners and even employees' biggest concerns right now?
It's kind of a real simple question, but with a lot of nuance. What does the customer actually want nowadays? We were in the pandemic and everyone wanted comfort food and like DoorDash and Grubhub and Uber Eats and third party, wanted to enjoy food. We didn't have a choice because of, dining room shutdowns and everything. And how is that translating with that kind of different overhead and spend, do folks want to be entertained in a huge, like a really ornate dining room? Or are they just here for the pristine food? You hear some there's a good comparison. Nick Kokonis, who's over at the Alinea Group, would always compare folks may want to spend $500 on a table at Alinea, but they also are paying that sort of money on scalp tickets to like concerts and sports. So do folks folks complain about going to the Beyonce show or Taylor Swift, but they're also really happy with the experience. And now with restaurants, is that an apt comparison anymore? I'm not sure, and I don't think the industry is either.
So obviously the question on a lot of people's mind is what does the customer want? But how are those restaurant trends going in terms of staffing, in terms of keeping people in their seats?
Well, staffing has kind of made a little bit of a recovery, and I think a lot of it is some of the stuff going on with the city council. It doesn't take in, we're talking about one fair wage and the abolition of the tip minimum wage. It seems like there's positive vibes, at least from the worker side, that the environment is going to be better. There's a new bar opening in Westtown called Lemon, and one of their bartenders was telling me that this bar is about the workers. It's not about the customer. It's about making sure the staff feels good, to minimize the number of steps, making sure that they're proper floor mats so their feet don't get sore. You saw probably in the Bear, and I'm going to limit my Bear references because I know a lot of folks are a little triggered by that. But you saw how hard these folks work, and then kind of keeling over, sitting and eating their meal on a bucket. And at this particular bar, they want to make sure that you have, it sounds like kind of trite, but you have actually a table and chair to eat your meal during your break. So there's some big strides going on in terms of worker retention. They're still figuring it out. I don't know if that answers the entire question, but I do think it's trending upward toward the worker side at this point.
I mean, one big thing you just mentioned that's going into effect this summer is the city will start phasing out the tip minimum wage. Can you remind people how that will work?
What is going to happen is you're going to take the tip minimum wage was kind of a government subsidiary to allow servers. You had, folks like that had to rely on tips like co-check folk to, pay them less than the standard minimum wage. But the argument was on slow days, folks wouldn't make as much because there would be less tips. I think it's a little controversial. It's a little murky, but the thinking is if everyone makes the same to start, everyone's going to be in a better situation. And I think in Chicago particularly, like a regular minimum wage, a standard minimum wage is higher than other places across the country.
I mean, how are restaurant workers and owners preparing for that shift? I imagine there are clearly different stakes here for both parties.
You began to see it a little bit already. I wrote a story about Boca, really well-known restaurant group. Their flagship is Boca in Lincoln Park, but they have all the Stephanie Izard restaurants as well. But we're going to see is some trimming of what they're going to term as non-essential workers, and they're going to folks are probably going to be lumped up a little bit with more responsibilities. They might have to polish silverware or mop floors. So we're seeing that to a point. And there have been threats of restaurants taking their business elsewhere. But I also think that's kind of a universal thing whenever it sways toward the workers. I think it's a little too early to see the full impact. Folks are going to have to figure that out over the course of the next couple months.
The goal is hopefully that the sort of bottom floor doesn't fall out for service workers who are very much reliant on those tips. But we've also heard from some bar workers who, for example, aren't looking forward to it as much because they think they'll make less in tips. Do you think that this political change will also change tipping habits around Chicago?
I can't remember which alderman said during the city council meeting where they abolished tip minimum wage, alderman said Chicago as a whole, they don't know how to tip. So education isn't very, it's not there. So you're going to see a lot of restaurants be very transparent on their websites and try to attempt this education. And we're probably going to see a little bit more service fees, though the legality of service fees is still being determined because we're not sure if that's a federal thing or what's really going to affect and how much they can actually offer. The restaurant Daisy's in Logan Square, they have a big pop-up window that comes at you when you're making a reservation, forcing you to read and check before you make your reservation. And it's a little aggressive, but they don't really have much of an alternative, or they're going to end up on Reddit as, there's a list of restaurants with service fees to avoid.
Start your wellness journey at Whole Foods Market, where it's Jumpstart January through the 16th. Stock up on supplements with some of the year's biggest savings. Plus, save on air-chilled organic boneless skinless chicken breasts, organic Honeycrisp apples, organic large Hass avocados, and more. And since Whole Foods Market is the only certified organic national grocer, it's easy to make them your wellness destination. Jumpstart your January now at Whole Foods Market.
When we were talking last year, another big thing on everybody's watch list for the year was the Kroger-Albertsons merger and the closure of several grocery stores on the west and south sides. Now the city has announced in the fall it will begin studying the possibility of a municipally owned grocery store. Do we have any information about what's happening there, both with the merger, but also with, what this may mean for the city stepping in and providing a public option?
Well, the Kroger and Albertsons thing, the federal government is still we're still waiting for those approvals. But grocery stores in general, I'm kind of giddy because we're going to write a lot about that in 2024. That's my promise to you, the listeners right now. As far as the kind of the public option, we are going to, I think in the next couple of years, we are going to see some sort of public option when it comes to grocery stores. I'm not sure if it's going to be what, the mayor and his allies have proposed, but certainly there is a real importance of grocery stores. I think I told you on the last appearance how, I was talking to then Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who saw grocery stores with their food courts as real ways to kind of feed the community and offer healthy, low-cost meals that are a little bit better. I'm not shaming on fast food, but when all you have is available is fast food, that's not a good thing. So these grocery stores have a real potential to be neighborhood icons, and how that public option is going to roll out, I'm not sure, but there are a lot of questions that remain.
From a a restaurateur standpoint, we saw a few more markets opening up where you might have stables of vendors or restaurants. Is that growing in popularity around Chicago? Do you think we'll see more of these?
Like, are we talking about like vendors like a Foxtrot type thing or a food court?
Yeah, or like a timeout market, like a food court, like a Gangnam market, just like these sort of these shared stables. At one point, I know in Pullman there were a few restaurants where Lexington Betty is. I just wanted to know, are these growing in popularity around the city? These markets or shared spaces?
I really think that the food hall market is that bubble is burst. There's we talked about Lexington Betty's and the food hall they had there. Right now, they're thinking about moving out because they need to make some significant improvements to the it's a newish space. It opened in the last couple of years, and she doesn't really know if that space is like a tune. But that's a separate issue. Timeout Market is kind of it's a bit of a free fall because the vendors there were all local for the longest time. And now they can't afford the rent. So they imported some folks from their other food hall in Miami, which is a little bit more stable, they're more familiar with, because Timeout's this huge media conglomerate. They have different food halls all over the world. Like they have them in Portugal, among other places. But when it comes to food hall, the urban space that's near Daily Plaza, Urban Place is Urban Space, is a New York brand. And they just quietly left the Chicago market. They left the food hall. They sold it to another company to manage. But food halls in general, I do think the bubble has burst. And it's a real shame because they could be sources of real, giving folks chances to incubate, to try their craft. But Greed is what has, destroyed them.
Greed on whose part? Because like you said, coming out of the pandemic, it seems like this would be a great opportunity for a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people looking for their first restaurant.
They have to use what the food hall is, and then they have to give a huge percentage of their orders to the food hall so it doesn't become cost effective. Gangnam Market has been a fresh breath of fresh air, but the difference is these are all brands created by the owner, Kenny Yang, who owns King Key and a couple other Strings ramen restaurant. And he's like kind of an entrepreneur. He's our local Chicago guy. He was telling me that he wants to keep costs down because he sees Whole Foods and other spaces kind of inflate their prices. And he didn't think that was right. But also he was kind of looking at me and goes, I will never open another grocery store. This is too much for me. And I was teasing him because that first day, it was packed gill to gill, and but the food is really good. But I do think that is a good model. I just don't see a lot of Kenny Yangs out there with that commitment to Chicago, that pride, put out like unique products. I wish we could, but instead we're going to see these other companies. We saw these other companies come in, parachute in, and just say, "Oh, we have another market. We need to be in Chicago because why not?"
Yeah. Anybody wanting to know, Gangnam Market is in River West. It's like an Asian market food hall. And it made a lot of best new restaurant lists in 2023 as it opened late last year. On maybe a more optimistic note, what are some restaurant openings you're most anticipating in 2024?
Joe Flam, Mr. Top Chef himself, he hasn't released many details, but he's going to open his third restaurant. It's also going to be the West Loop. I don't know much about it, but Joe told me, I had a story I wanted to tell with Rosemary. I got another story to tell, and I'm excited for him. He's another in that group with Kenny Yang, real Chicago person is going to find something that will serve the people well. Really excited about that. There's a restaurant that's opening, it just opened last week of December. It's called Maxwell Trading, and it's from a really talented chef named Erling Wu Bauer. He's been around. His mom was a really noted food critic for a while. This restaurant has food that Chicago has never seen. It's got this the menu is it's not fusion because that kind of cheapens it. It just pulls from a bunch of Asian cultures and it's not cheap. Erling is Cajun and Chinese. That's his heritage. So the menu reflects his heritage. But they have this bread. It's part naan, part Chinese scallion pancake, and it's used to kind of dunk the various dips. It's fire. It's really good. But those are two of the restaurants, and I think one of the big changes with 2024. There's not a long runway. I don't have a lot of restaurants that I could say I'm really excited about. I think folks are a little reluctant with construction delays, the economy. They don't want to show their cards too early.
One of the big trends we talked about with our friends from the Infatuation Chicago team was there were a lot of restaurants, or a couple of restaurants in 2023 that had like a 2.0. Right? Whether it was, Soleil opening a second run, or Daisy's, or Pravari moving into a new space. Are there any restaurants that maybe are looking at a revitalization? They're remodeling right now that you're excited to see what they do next?
Oh, wow. Like I might get in trouble, but there are a couple of huge restaurant folks that are looking at new spaces, and I'm not ready to, I don't want to spoil it for them, but there are a couple of big names. I say look out for Lincoln Square and North Center. There might be some stuff going on there. This is just if I don't want to burn the source here, and then they're like,
I got you.
Here's something. Yeah, this will be good. Duck's Red Hots, the hot dog stand.
Uh-huh.
It's been around for 75 years. It's a little stand. It used to be called Donald Duck's. Disney came down and said, no, you have to change your name. It's a legendary story. They're going to close very, very soon this winter. And it's going to be, they just applied for a liquor license, and they're going to rename themselves Modern Relish. So that's, I'm wondering what is going to, is the food going to be the same? Am I going to be, is it going to be boozy, milkshakes? What's the deal? So we don't know a lot of what's going on there, but that's, I think that's kind of in the 2.0 realm that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm. Before I let you go, any other meals you're looking forward to this year, whether it's new restaurants you're excited to get to or get back to?
I'm going to be a homer. It's kind of sick that Chicago has never had a Michelin-starred Indian restaurant. And that happened this year in the end.
That was one of my favorite experiences, from the food to the service. It was a great time.
Yeah, I think that's pretty kind of landmark. It's a lot, and it's going to make a lot of people feel good. Cebu. Okay, Cebu Filipino restaurant. They're moving from Wicker Park to Lakeview, and they're going to have a bigger space. That's going to be great because Filipino food, it's good to see folks, able to kind of share their culture and make a little bit of money and be proud of who they are.
Mm-hmm. Boonies had a big moment last year, so it'll be exciting for another restaurant with Cebu. Ashok, every time you come on, not only do you give us great meals and restaurants to look forward to, but fantastic information on Chicago's food scene. We appreciate you making time.
Oh, my pleasure. Take care.
Hey, happy eating in 2024.
Before you fully embark on this new year, remember to vote for CityCast Chicago as Best Podcast and Hey Chicago as Best Newsletter in the Chicago Reader's Best of 2023. Check the link in the show notes under the City Life category. And thanks. And some good news to get you through. The Young Playwrights Festival begins this week. Catch one-act plays written by Chicago high schoolers starting Thursday at Pegasus Theater in Westtown. And I gotta say, these kids are really after my own heart because this year's winning plays feature ghosts, aliens, and the trappings of artificial intelligence. That's it for today. We'll be back tomorrow. And guess what? It's National Trivia Day. We'll talk to you then.
Doom, 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 doom.